The election hinged on many factors, most prominently COVID-19. Good Day DePaul's Demita Menezes talked to some political experts at DePaul for their take on this historic election.
As the results rolled in on election night and the days after, so did a strong sense of deja vu. Pre-election polls, it had appeared, had been misleading once again.
While the nation awaited final results from Pennsylvania, Nevada, and other key states, it was clear that the polling industry failed to account for the missteps that led it to underestimate Donald Trump's support 4 years ago. Polling didn't just underestimate Trump's support again this year, it also misread the support for many Republican Senate candidates, both in and out of Trump's orbit.
There's no question that the state polls were poorly performing this year, as they were 4 years ago. But since the professional pollsters did supposedly correct their sample for 2020, it is a big mystery why the state polls were so far off. The national polls actually were pretty good.
Democrats will remain in control of the House of Representatives, but struggle to gain new seats. After taking the House in 2018, Democrats had expected to carve much further into the suburbs, once dominated by Republicans. Meanwhile, control of the Senate remains uncertain and could hinge on two runoff elections in Georgia. In Iowa, Senator Joni Ernst won a second term against challenger Teresa Greenfield, despite being badly outspent by the Democrats throughout the race. And in Maine, Senator Susan Collins easily won re-election despite polls showing she was behind.
This is another situation where perhaps the polls were not good. In fact, the Iowa polls, many, especially in the weeks before the election, suggested that Biden was going to win Iowa. And then there was a very late poll from the Des Moines Register, which said, no, Trump is really pulling ahead. So Democrats perhaps did not campaign hard enough in those two states, but those are really the two big surprises, that Ernst and Collins were reelected.
According to veteran ABC News correspondent Chris Bury, Democrats may need to improve their outreach in the future.
The Democrats are not going to change their policy on abortion or global warming or racial equality. Those are bedrocks of the Democratic Party. And so there's no real need for them to change. But could they do more to explain their message to Trump voters, to white rural Americans? Absolutely. Could Biden have done a better job to suggest that he wasn't a socialist, as he was painted to be by the Trump campaign? Absolutely.
House Democrats lost 7 seats in battleground districts, including in South Carolina, New Mexico, and Iowa. Democrats also lost 2 seats in South Florida. Many Cuban and Venezuelan expatriates live in that part of Florida. Some feel they bought into President Trump's claims that the Democrats would bring socialism to some of the country's policies. Meanwhile, some Democrats say GOP attacks on law and order also cost their party support in Trump country, including Latino voters.
We're also seeing that Democrats did not do as well this year in reaching out to Latino voters. In fact, the Trump margin of Latino voters is up significantly, especially in Florida, over 4 years ago. So, for years, many Black Americans have felt the Democratic Party took them for granted. Now it may be true that Latino voters could make that same argument.
Republicans still are much better than the Democrats about taking their campaign and addressing the issues that those people have. And just to, look down on those people and say, oh, those are just Trump supporters. Well, they're Trump supporters for a reason. They are, they have problems and concerns. And frankly, they get ignored by the Democrats. They often get lied to by the Republicans, and they are a very volatile group. But right now, the president has made a very strong connection with them that in terms of saying, I pay attention to you. And you saw still a lot of loyalty among those voters to the president.
Trump is the first defeat of an incumbent president in 28 years. He commanded about 48% of the popular vote, meaning he retained nearly half of the public support despite having 4 years of setbacks, scandals, impeachment, and the COVID-19 pandemic that killed more than 200,000 Americans. The message of this election is clear. The country is very divided. But the question remains, can politicians bring people together and bridge the gap that separates them? Reporting from downtown Chicago, I'm Davida Menezes for Good Day to Poll.